Hello guys, welcome to Thermomix Adventures. Lisa here. Look, it's early today, but I'm getting a head start on the snacks for the kids. This month is all about healthy snacks, okay, and getting ready for your term ahead, your work ahead, whatever it might be. Or maybe just having something in the fridge or freezer so that you can reach in and grab something healthy when it comes to that time when you're feeling hungry and would rather go for a chocolate bar. So today I'm going to show you how to make these yummy biscuits. Now I'm going to make them gluten-free. They are not dairy-free. I don't think you can make them dairy-free because the key feature here is cheese. So I do apologize those of you who are dairy-free. Let's get straight into this recipe. It's really simple, okay? And as I said, I'm going to convert them to gluten-free with some tips for you today. First things first is we're going to go start cooking, and it says preheat our hot ovens. It's going to 220 degrees. By the way, if you're watching on today, do say hi. And also, if you want to get the downloadable with the 16 recipes we are covering in January, go over to www.tmxingadventures, like BMXing but with a D.com.au, and it is actually there on the blog. So if you go up to the heading, go to blog, you will find the most recent blog is the downloadable for this. So you can grab that. There's some tips in there about substitutions as well. So feel free to go grab that. Do subscribe while you're over there as well, because then you're going to get a whole lot of resources to your inbox over the coming month to help you get more out of your Thermomix. As well as that, you get to know the upcoming things I'm doing as well. But let's do this. So line some trays with baking paper. I've got my rose gold up the back with the silicone mat on it. That's how I'm going to do this. Now, cheddar cheese. I don't buy cheddar cheese. It's a little too much for our budget to buy cheddar cheese. We just buy Tasty and use that for everything, even if it calls for Colby or whatever. I don't know. All these brands, I don't know. We just buy Tasty, whatever's the cheapest per kilo, and we use that. So I've cut it up, ready to go. Rule of thumb with your sizings of cheese, because cheese is a bit spongy, I guess might be the word. And so sometimes if you overload or you make the bits too big, your Thermomix will not start. You'll hear it going trying to start, and it can't. So the rule of thumb is no bigger than your silver dial and preferably no thicker than your silver dial, and you will have no problem with your cheese. Okay, so it's got 250 grams of cheese into the Thermomix, and we are going to be grating this down. Now I'm not using my chopper. Number one, it's not in this recipe, but number two, the texture at the end, this is just going to become part of the biscuit, right? So grate or not grate. And I guess if you had a bag of grated cheese, I would suggest not buying grated cheese in a bag. It's often more expensive. It's also covered in a white little powder that gives people tummy aches often, because it stops the slices, whatever word it is, like the little bits of cheese sticking together in the bag. And in doing so, that stops, when we digest it, it stops our body being able to break down those little bits of cheese. Okay, so it actually can cause people tummy aches. So if you do find that you get tummy aches after eating grated cheese, that will be why. So let's go on to 5 seconds on speed 8 is our cheese grating speed, and then we're going to place this aside. I think they officially call it an anti-caking agent. So the idea being that it doesn't cake together. If you've ever grated your own cheese, you would know that it does. It sticks back together in the packaging you put it in. So if you go put it in like a Glad bag or something, it actually sticks together. Okay, look at that. Grated cheese in 5 seconds. Speed 8. How cool. That is so awesome. Another tip with cheese grating is try and make sure your cheese is cold out of the fridge, because obviously the warmer it is, as far as it starts softening and getting spongier, and then obviously it doesn't chop as nicely. You could end up with cream cheese from over chopping your cheese. Okay, all right, next up, transfer to a bowl. Now we've got unsalted butter. If you only had salted butter, roll with that and later on skip the salt out. Okay, that is perfectly fine. 160 grams of that. Let's click on next. On with the lid, and measuring cup is going to melt for a second. Okay, so it's got 4 minutes, reverse 50 degrees to melt this down. Now on the next step, it's going to ask us to take some of this butter and place it aside, okay? We've got a little bowl ready for that, because we're going to use that later when these come out the oven to make a beautiful little melted butter, parsley, garlicky top thing for them, okay? So be ready with a little bowl for that. You'll also need on hand some baking powder, some plain flour, some salt, some sugar, and that's about it. Okay, so that's all we need for this recipe. Now, a couple of little tips. If you are about to do gluten-free like I am, there is a risk when you're doing things like this, because really this is a kind of a modified butter biscuit. If we think about a butter biscuit in its traditional form, it is butter and flour. Now, gluten-free flour doesn't hold like gluten in flour does. So if you've ever had, say you've cooked with gluten-free flour, you've made some biscuits and they come out of the oven and they were nice and round, and then when you got them out, they were well spread across your pan into one big slab, that would be because it didn't have the gluten to hold its particles together. Now, the key way to get around this is actually to add something called xanthan gum or gar gum. This is a product that is a binder. It is something that gives it texture. You'll notice it in most of the gluten-free bread recipes, which I can highly suggest. The chia and the pita loaf, the gluten-free artisan loaf are both beautiful favorites at our house. Oh, and the buckwheat loaf is amazing as well, okay? So they're the sorts of ones I can suggest, and you'll see it in there, because if you forget it out, your mixture ends up like runnier than pancake batter. And you'll be like, why is this texture? Why is this not worked the way it's supposed to? And it literally comes down to the fact that it hasn't got the structure to thicken. The moment you add that, usually into a loaf of bread, it's about a teaspoon of gar gum or xanthan. The moment you add 1 teaspoon, you notice that changes completely to a thicker than cake texture. Okay, it's not like a dough usually that you could touch. Like if you've got a dough ball, you can touch it, handle it, it holds form. We're not talking about that. We're talking more like a thickened cake mix, which is typical of gluten-free. Okay, when you're making cakes and stuff or breads, you'll notice it's more like a thicker cake batter. Now, just a little side note, I can see in here, I took the lid off so you can see that big clump of butter? I didn't cut it down, I forgot. That's going to be taking a while, and I want to actually speed this process. So I'm just going to blitz it for a second. All right, all I'm doing there is I wanted to get rid of that massive chunk, because obviously if I can make this faster for you guys, the better. Now look at that, you can see you'll be cooking this on with the lid on, and you'll be walking away and doing other things, but I wanted to do it so that it melts faster for you guys ultimately. But you can see there, now there's no big chunks, and that will be done in probably the next, it's got 1 minute to go, but about 30 seconds. If I got to it earlier, it would have been better. But anyway, say hi if you're watching on today. If you've got cooking planned, let me know. If you're stocking the fridge for or the freezer, do let me know as well. I've got 2 things I'm going to bring to you today. Obviously this is one nice and early, and a lunchy type one later on, which I'm actually right now making sun-dried tomatoes for. So we've got an abundance of little cherry tomatoes at the moment, and so I've sliced them all in half. They're in the oven at 120 degrees for a couple of hours. So looking forward to making a yummy lunch later and actually including our homemade sun-dried tomatoes. So if you do ever have abundance of like tomatoes, don't let them go to waste. Dry them, dehydrate them, eat in the oven. You can do it in the oven. You don't need anything fancy for it. It's very, very rewarding when you've done that for the first time and you're like, oh wow, I've just done this. Okay, so give it a go. All right, just about done. 7 seconds to go. We need to transfer 50 grams aside next. Here it goes. So there you go, look at that. There's a few chunks in there, that won't matter. We don't want the chunks though in our melted butter amount. So it says scale to 0 and put 50 aside in a small bowl. So let's bring up our scales. Our scales live, if you ever need, oh, I'm so confused with my cameras this one. If you ever need to bring up scales mid-recipe, go to the 3 dots, go to scales, and then you've got your scales to pull on there, okay? We're gonna go for 50 grams. I've just gotta pour it from a height so that I get a good reading. Nearly done. There we go. Perfect. I didn't miss the bowl. That's amazing. By the way, this recipe is egg-free as well for those of you who need to be egg-free. All right, close those scales up. Let's keep going. All right, plain flour, 260 grams of plain flour. As I said, I'm doing gluten-free. You're just going to do whatever you would normally do. But GF people, I'm going to give you a tip in a second. So in goes 260, sorry, my mistake. Nearly done. There we go. Does anyone else have this trouble at their house? Look at that, where it opens and closes. By the way, thank you to those of you who responded the other day with, you know how I said, put your little love heart depending on the age you are. Thank you to those of you who took the time to respond. It was really great to see the variety of ages who enjoy the benefits that a Thermomix brings. So, I think I knew that, but it's nice to be able to validate that as well. So thank you so much to all of you. I did have some funny comments privately sent about, you know, I've just had a birthday. That's not fair. I've moved up in my hearts. So yes. By the way, I'm going to put on yogurt later today as well because this actually expired day before yesterday. So make yogurt with your leftover milk before it expires, or you can make custard and turn it into ice cream. There's lots of things you can do. I tend to make ricotta a lot as well, where you just heat it up, add the vinegar. It's in my cheese course, check that out. I make a really massive batch in the Thermomix of ricotta, and ricotta is so nice to have on all sorts of things. And then you've got the beautiful whey that you can use in all your bread making. At the moment, my son as well is starting a sourdough starter. We're feeding that twice a day, so hopefully in the next couple of days I'll be able to show you how to do some sourdough work as well. So that's going to be super exciting. That will be glutinous. Okay, we don't do a lot of gluten, but we do a little bit, and so I'm excited to hopefully have that with enough bubbles to show you how that works. Has anyone done sourdough? If you have, if you've worn that badge of honor, put it in the chat, because that is something that takes, it is a skill to master. It is something that takes time. It's something that, it's like owning an animal. You need to keep feeding it, okay? So I'd love to know if you can say, yes, I have a sourdough starter, or I've had one and I did great and I loved it. Let me know. All right, there's my milk. I cut it a little bit short. That's okay. 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'm just going to cut that down just a smidgen. Don't want that much in it. I think that just offsets the flavor, I think. I don't know. I reckon you could leave it out. But if you're a sweet tooth, I wouldn't leave it out, okay? Just a little, or maybe you're cooking for someone who's a sweet tooth, then don't leave it out. It's got quite a bit of baking powder in. This is 1 tablespoon of baking powder. So it's actually got quite an amount. That probably wasn't enough in there. You can see when I cook, I just guesstimate. It is close enough, is good enough. If the TBS and the TSP confuse you, okay, in cooking, ignore the T, always look at the second letter. B is for big spoon, S is for small spoon. Okay, I hope that helps somebody. I just want to put in my xanthan gum before I forget, okay? So mine is gluten-free. If you're just doing standard plain flour, you will not need this at all. I'm just going to put in I'm just going to say, I'm going to put in just probably about 1/4 teaspoon. It won't require much. This is not as big as a loaf of bread where you'd be putting in a full teaspoon, okay? So put that in. All right, next. Okay, garlic powder, 1.5 tablespoons. This is our flavor enhancer. Now, I reckon you could get away with using garlic. Like if you had, you'd have to pre-chop it down with the cheese. I reckon you could get away with it. Anyone else find garlic powder goes solid? All right, totally normal. Because, sorry while I tap it, because it absorbs the moisture out of our air. So unless you've got the little moisture absorber tabs in it, it's going to go hard on you, okay, without fail. You kind of can't help that. Often I will try and buy the granules instead of the powder. We sometimes have to work with what we've got here. We live a little bit rural. But yes, because you'll find the granules, so the ones that are little chunky ones, they actually don't solidify as fast, okay? But you will find onion and garlic do that regularly. Okay, 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And then I think we're just about done. We might have the cheese back in, and let's mix this through and finish it. So, all right, next, let's push the next button. There's a bit of a glare on my screen and I really struggle to see that button. On with our measuring cup. By the way, TM31, TM5, Thermo cooker, you can make this, okay? Let's put this on, 10 seconds, reverse speed 3. I'm nearly done. And there it is. I love how much time we get with the Thermomix to get ourselves organized, right? So let's see how this looks. Do I need to scrape it down and do it again? Are we done? No, we're done. Woohoo! Look at that. All right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just put it on a wee longer. I'd like to get the rest of my mix through. You do have to make sure you don't over mix it. Probably, when I've got gluten-free flour, it is more, what's the word I'm after? It doesn't mind being a little bit more over mixed. Glutinous flour, if you over mix it, you end up with tough, chewy biscuits or muffins or cakes. You hear it having a go, like that's struggling because of the thickness, that's okay, all right? If it continued to struggle, I would have stopped it and I actually would have Like I would have completely stopped it and I would have rejigged my mixture inside. If you only went like and did it 3 times, I went, and then I went, oh, I can do this, okay? The Thermomix is super smart. It actually then puts a little bit more rev to the machine if it's getting that resistance. So, but that's ready to go. So now it makes 18 biscuits. So I'm going to want to put about 9 on each tray. Look at that. How good does that look? You guys have a top camera these days, so I don't really need to show you like that. It does just say to put balls on a tray. It says 18 tablespoonfuls onto the prepared tray. Bake for 8 to 10 minutes at 220. And then while it's baking, they want you to put some parsley. So what I might do, hang on, before we do that, let me just show you what a tablespoon of this looks like. By the way, love the rose gold trays for the mix shop. A tablespoon, a dob. Remember to leave space, they are going to spread. Okay, if you look at the picture, you can see that they end up larger. So I will be pressed to put 3 here. I'll probably go 2, and then I'll go 3, and I'll go like that, okay? Because they will probably sit wider. So I won't show you how to put them on the tray because I reckon you know that skill already. What I will just talk you through is this final part. So it says to add half a teaspoon of dried parsley, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of salt to the reserved melted butter and stir to combine. So we're just literally grabbing this butter. What did it say? Half a teaspoon of parsley dried, okay? Half a teaspoon of garlic. Is it the garlic powder? Yep. With the Thermomix, with this garlic powder, remember as well that if it does get too solid, you can put it back in the Thermi, blitz it down, and you've got yourself a paste again, okay? So half a teaspoon of that, and then half a teaspoon of salt. And we'll just mix it through with the teaspoon and we're literally done. So that is half a teaspoon of salt. I just don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, half a teaspoon of salt. We stir that through, and when it comes out of the oven, we are actually then putting that, once baked, brush prepared butter over the baked biscuits while still hot and serve warm. So that's thickened up nicely. I'll just show you what that looks like. Look at that. Can't do this very well. Can't drive the camera. There we go. And that's what's going to go on when it gets out of the oven in 8 to 10 minutes at 220 degrees. So, of course, I will share a picture. Those of you over on YouTube, you'll see it at the beginning of it. And then Facebook, I really do try and share pictures afterwards, but it's a bit trickier. Life gets a bit crazy at my house at times with all of us here. But I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Please do share these videos with your friends and family who have a Thermomix, or maybe they just need the ease a Thermomix would bring to their kitchen. If they need help to get a Thermomix, I would love to talk to them before they get a Thermomix. I'd love to help them get one on the bench, okay? I have a purchase link I can send them, or they can head through my website to check out how to get one themselves. More than happy to chat though, okay? So if they're, some people like to talk beforehand, some don't. That's perfectly okay. But otherwise, thanks for joining me today. I will be back later making a yummy lunch. Do go hashtag replay if you're watching replays, okay? Do say hi if you're watching along. Do answer the questions. It tells Facebook that you are interested in these videos, and they will keep putting them back in your news feed. If you stop commenting on things, Facebook thinks you're not interested, and guess what? They don't put them in your news feed anymore. So please do that. And also on that note, I guess the other way is, if the most consistent way is actually jump over and become a subscriber over on my website, because that means we won't lose touch. You will find each month, at the beginning of a month, I tend to do a newsletter, and it has a review of what was and what's to come. You get sneak peeks. So if you do, miss out on seeing things because Facebook's not showing you them, or you just can't find them, or you looked at a glance and then Facebook thought you saw it, so they took it off your newsfeed, then you've got that chance to do a rejig on it and go, oh, I haven't thought about making that in my Thermomix. How do I do that? So please, that's the easiest way. Please consider that, or go over to YouTube, because similarly, it's like a library of recipes. And all of these, once I add the picture at the beginning and the end, they go over there and they go up in the next couple of days. So if you do miss something, it's that second layer opportunity to actually make sure you see it and then make it, because they're made to cook along with if you'd like as well. But otherwise, guys, thanks for joining me today. Take care. I'll see you later on as we make something else delicious and easy and healthy to stock the fridge and freezer for work or school or life ahead. But take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.